Namaskar. Welcome to this session. We were considering Kshanatat Krama Samyama. Samyama on Kshana and Tat Krama. Moments, precisely Kshana, and succession of Kshanas. That is, succession of moments. This subject matter is not of empirical perception. This is matter of samadhi perception, knowledge of samadhi perception. Certain knowledges only come in samadhi. They are not subject matter for empirical perception. We can have perception of time. Seconds are passing, minutes are passing, hours are passing. You can look at the watch and you will see the seconds are passing, moments are passing, minutes are passing, etc. So that is a matter of average empirical perception or normal average empirical perception. However, we have seen that Kshana, the moment, is infinitesimally finite unit of time. Now that itself is not matter of our perception, and therefore the succession of it is also therefore not matter of normal common laukika pratyaksham. As I just now told you, passing of seconds can be matter of perception. We can look at the chronometer and we will see that seconds are passing, minutes are passing, hours are passing. But seconds or minutes or hour are unit of time which are not infinitely finite unit of time, but Kshana is indeed that, and therefore the Kshana and its Krama both are samadhi perception, and tat samyamat vivekajam jnanam. Tat samyamat vivekaja jnana comes up, and we have often discussed vivekaja jnanam. Now, what is really the endowment of such vivekaja jnanam coming out of Kshana tat krama samyama? So, as I said during the end of last session, that it gives vishesha kind of jnana, a special kind of jnana, that therefore it is not the knowledge of average perception. Tasya vishaya vishesha upakshipyate. And therefore this needs the explanation. What is it? Whatever is going to be consequence of such special laukika pratyaksham, alaukika pratyaksham. And Patanjali therefore commences to mention this in the 54th Sutra of the Vibhuti Pada. Jati lakshana reshaihi anyata anavachhedat taltulyaha tataha pratipattihi. This is the speciality of knowledge that yogis are able to have. And we can easily understand the difference between our knowledge and consequence and effect of knowledge and yogis' knowledge and its consequences. There is that ocean of difference. What is the special ability, special faculty that yogi gets? And towards the end of last session I told you that we are not able to distinguish with so many things. They seem to be absolutely similar. The two drops of water, they are so similar. Two glasses of water, they are so similar. Then unless we mark with something, we will not be able to distinguish. To proceed on that description, suppose it is blackout and pitch dark. You do not know where you are, in which location you are in that pitch dark state, complete blackout. You will not be able to distinguish the space that you are in if you are shuffled. If wherever you are, and if there is suddenly a blackout, you will know that you are in the drawing room and the blackout has happened. But otherwise, the blackout in drawing room to any other room in your own house would be identical. Whether the blackout happens in a rural area or urban area, it is identical. Blackout happens between country A or country B, it is identical. Region A or region B, it is identical. City A or city B, it is identical. So we don't see any object of distinction. However, we know that they are different in different spaces, and therefore there should be some difference. That is the special knowledge ability that yogi gets by this samyama, kshana, tatkrama. So Patanjali begins to describe it. Jati lakshana deshaihi anyata anavachchedat. Anyata cannot be grasped. Like as I said, blackout in room A or room B or city A or city B, anavachchedat, you cannot be grasping it. The distinction is unattainable. It is because it is tulyaha. But yet, there is some difference which empirical perception or empirical process doesn't give. You need a special faculty to distinguish between two similars. Because they only seem similar, it doesn't mean they are similar. So when something seems similar, then it becomes impossible for common man, average human being, to distinguish between the two insofar as the differences are concerned. But with Vivekaja Jnanam, that becomes possible. So, this is the precise definition of this special kind of knowledge. Jati lakshana deshaihi anyata. When there is anyata, that anyata cannot be perceived. Difference is there, but difference cannot be perceived by mortal process, empirical process of a mortal. But yet there is a difference. Seems to be no difference, but that doesn't mean that there is no difference. There is always a difference. So let's try to understand. The two similar are thereby distinguished when not separately distinguishable by genus, differentia and position in space. This is what the sutra is trying to tell us. It is not distinguishable by genus, differentia and position in space. Jati lakshana deshaihi. Jati lakshana desha. When two things are indistinguishable because of the genus or species or class, or even when the attributary and qualitative aspects being identical, when they are in one and the same region or confines or regional confines, it is difficult to distinguish between them, and therefore we mark them with something so that we are able to identify. So understand why we are in habit of marking on something, so that we can easily identify. This is how we go about. That's why we have developed this habit of marking something with something. But Viveka Jnana gives this faculty without having been marked. Yogi is able to distinguish in the two indistinguishable things. So Vyasa begins to explain these conditions. He says that its sphere is defined. The distinction is defined when the position and the secondary qualities called lakshana are the same. The genus causes the distinction between the two similar, such as this is a cow, etc., or this is a mar, etc. When position and genus are common, the secondary qualities cause the distinction, as is the case with a black-eyed cow and an auspicious cow. Between two umbilic fruits, where the genus and the secondary qualities are the same, like the two umbilical fruits are absolutely same in dimension, color, etc., etc., then it is difficult to distinguish which was brought first and which was brought second, or which are handled by right hand and which was handled by left hand, or which was handled earlier and which was handled later, etc. The difference in the position causes the distinction. This is anterior and this is posterior is also difficult to distinguish. When, however, the anterior umbilic fruit moves to a posterior position in space at a time, and when the seer may be looking elsewhere, like you are asked to look somewhere else and the two umbilic fruits are shuffled, then you have difficulty in identifying which is anterior, which is posterior, which came first and which came second, or which was brought by a person A, which was brought by person B. So if your attention is gone from the fruit for a short while, then it is difficult to really distinguish. So that's the plight of a common man and the empirical process of a common man. Vyasa says, in the knowledge of truth, however, there should be no doubt. Hence it has been said, they are thereby distinguished. Because yogi knows the reality and wants to know reality and knows reality. And therefore it becomes possible for a yogi who is bestowed with Viveka Jnanam. So the umbilical fruits are separate in their sequential notions of movements and in the time correlated to their distinct position in space. The sequential notion of space correlated to another moment of time is the means of distinction, as is the case. So, also in the case of atoms which have commonality, of genus, secondary qualities, and position in space. So by discovering the yet unknown, the correlation of every atomic position in space to a differentia of time, the sequential notion of such position in space for anterior atom becomes distinct from such position in space for enabling the distinction of the atoms. On the analogy of this position in space for enabling distinction of the atoms, the analogy of this illustration is something that we will be able to figure out what is this ability to distinguish that a yogi has, having attained vivekaja jnanam by their samyama. What Vyasa says in the above very terse para is that although the two umbilical fruits are similar in all apparent attributes, yet they have had different radiations in time and space. The yogi is able to have these quite apparent attributes for him because of such exalted faculty of vivekaja jnanam. The yogi is also able to see the changes such as dharma lakshana avastha, moment to moment, which is not possible for we mortals. And therefore the changes are taking place. If the changes are taking place at very moment, which is absolute reality, it is not perceivable for we mortals. However, for a yogi, it becomes possible. Yogi is able to see position and condition of Purva Paramanu and Uttaravarti Paramanu. So these changes depend upon the succession of moments. In fact, that here are the moment-to-moment changes in all categories. The succeeding moment is registered by the Aishwaryavan yogi having attained the samyama. Such distinctions becomes quite possible, easily possible for a yogi because of this vivekajam jnanam. Now we might wonder, so why do we have to distinguish between two similar and umbilical fruits? Why should we be in a position to distinguish between the blackout in one location and blackout another location with distinction? Or the glass of water which was brought first and glass of water which was brought later. For us they are similar and they serve similar purpose, then where is the need of this? Yes, in mundanity we don't need this faculty. That is very true. We just can do by whatever is given by empirical process, and that is enough for our worldly conduct. But for a yogi who is looking for satya, who is looking for truth, and when he is looking for sattva purusha anyata khyati, as I said during the last session, that they are absolutely identical. The sattva, buddhi sattva, and the purusha chaitanya, atma chaitanya. And then what we have is atma chaitanya and bhasamana chaitanya in our psyche. We are conscious principle, but we also have a seemingly conscious principle with which we are carrying out our worldly activity. And yogi needs to have the distinction between the two. The essential I and the empirical temporal I. We don't need this distinction in our walk of life on the mundane plane. But yogi needs to have this distinction between the two which are absolutely indistinguishable. So that becomes that much important for a yogi. And that is why this that pratipatti of distinction which happens due to vivekajam jnanam, tatah pratipatti, is important. So that is the description of the Sutra 3.54. Now another speciality which again I have mentioned already, but now Patanjali himself is mentioning about the Vivekajam Jnanam. What is the importance of it for a yogi, which has no importance for you and me in our worldly realm and our negotiation of worldly conditions. So he mentions that in the final sutra of the Vibhuti Pada, tarakam, that knowledge is tarakam, that knowledge is savior from mundanity, worldliness. So he says, tarakam sarva vishayam sarvatha vishaya akramam cha iti vivekajam jnanam. So Patanjali describes that aspect of vivekaja jnana which, as I said, is the ultimate knowledge for the yogi. So, tarakam, it is savior from mundanity. And therefore it is called taraka jnanam. Now how is this taraka jnanam? Sarva vishayam sarvatha vishayam. So it is knowledge about everything and all the time. Sarva vishayam sarvatha vishayam. And then also akramam. We don't need the succession or successive stages to be perceived. So it is something that it is with a slap of fingers. So that knowledge coming with slap of fingers simultaneously without the krama, the succession of stages, it is in one stroke. Knowledge comes in one stroke. Now we don't get this knowledge in one stroke everywhere. We know it is a process. Today we know a little bit, tomorrow we know little more about, then a little more and more about, and a little more and more and more and more about, and we have the structure of knowledge coming up. Until the time we can claim that I have complete knowledge about it, it is a process. Whereas yogi gets this in one instance, in one single stroke. Though that is described with the predicate akramam. And that is how the vivekajam jnanam is. So this taraka jnana is knowledge of all states of the objects can come to him simultaneously in one moment. Now when we have knowledge of umbilical fruit in our hand, we do not have the knowledge of all latent stages of that umbilical fruit, and we don't have any prospective stages of the umbilical fruit. The umbilical fruit is going to go through different stages until it becomes dry, useless, and loses its substance and no longer remains as an umbilical fruit. And then there are so many stages which have gone latent, which have become latent. Because the fruit comes on the tree comes from the sapling comes from the sprout comes from the seed. So all these knowledges are not there in our empirical process. And therefore he uses the predicate About the umbilical fruit, sarvatha. That means all states of umbilical fruits will be a matter of object of knowledge for a yogi, that too in one stroke, one single moment. Now, this is not the subject matter of our knowledge at all. When we know something, we do not know the latent stages of it, and we do not know the potential stages of it. We know only the present state of the object. That is our object of knowledge. So, that is what Patanjali is telling us here about this typical specific knowledge. So, knowledge of all states of the object of knowledge. Now, this we very well know, we do not have this faculty. And they come to me simultaneously in one single moment, in one single stroke. Secondly, why is such discriminative knowledge mentioned in the previous sutra necessary? So I told you the answer. Why does the yogi need to identify distinction in two identical objects? This is as a matter of paramount importance for him. And if you recall the asampragnat samadhi process, which was considered in the Samadhi Pada, the sarvavrutti nirodha of virama pratyaya can take place in two loci. One is nominal avyakta, akshara and mula prakriti, and the other one is nominal purusha tattva, because both are unmanifest. The both are nominal. Now the two nominals are to be distinguished. And it is so important for a yogi to have the knowledge of the two nominals and distinction of the two nominals, because both are not phenomenal. This is essential for a yogi to distinguish between avyakta buddhi or prakriti and avyakta purusha. Now these are absolutely indistinguishable. Although they are absolutely distinct, the viveka jnana needs it. It becomes vitally important. Now, you know that asampragnat samadhi is a taraka, it's a savior. And that's why Patanjali mentions it is taraka jnanam. So according to Vyasa, intuitional and also self-prescience, which is not attained by teaching, it is not instructional but intuitional. That's why it is samadhi process, intuitive process of samadhi gives that knowledge. Vachaspati Mishra adds to its meaning by calling taraka as being capable of helping cross the ocean of worldliness, ocean of mundane mire, and universal phenomenalism. That's why it is called tarakam. Then Vyasa also says that the predicate sarva vishaya it has everything for its sphere of operation. Yogi is able to know everything. He is capable of knowing everything. Sarvajñatrutvam cha was discussed on an earlier occasion. So yogi is now in a position to know anything and everything that is needed for him to be known. And nothing remains to be unknown. So that is sarva vishaya. Then he says it has also the condition for its sphere, the all, as it was, or will be, that is the sphere of time. He knows sarvatha. Sarvatha means in all states. And we very well know that mortals do not have this in the sphere of knowledge. So it has all conditions for its sphere, and all objects in its sphere of knowledge. Moreover, it is with no succession of condition or condition of succession in that knowledge process. Like we have our cognitive knowledge process, our knowledge has an order of succession. We know something in the beginning, we know something little later, something further later, and something finally. So there is that order of succession in our knowledge. For example, first we know a thing and then another thing. We cannot know two things simultaneously also. We will know one thing and then the another thing. The first is basic knowledge, and then slowly it becomes deeper knowledge as well. But here it means he takes in all as correlated to but one moment. They happen in one moment. Thus, he is capable of knowing all things in all conditions in one stroke, simultaneously. Thus, it is accomplishing knowledge and accomplished knowledge. Knowledge is accomplished by this process. So, let's try to open out this sutra once again for better comprehension. Going by Vyasa's commentary, we will do it. Tarakam iti swapratibhotham. Swapratibha, one's own intuition. Pratibha, intuitive process. We have discussed what is this intuitive process for a yogi. So tarakam iti swapratibhotham anupadeshikam iti arthaha. This is not instructed knowledge. This is intuitive knowledge of a yogi. There can be no instruction about this knowledge. No one can instruct about this knowledge. It is swapratibhotham anupadeshikam. We are used to aupadeshika knowledge, that means by instruction we get certain knowledge. Upadesha, upadeshatmaka. While this is not upadeshatmaka, it is anupadeshika. This is clearly mentioned by Vyasa. It is swaspurta. It is intuition for oneself, from oneself, within oneself. And this knowledge is tarakam jnanam, which is clarified by Vachaspati Mishra in his comment. He says it really saves one from mundane ocean of the mire, mundane ocean of mire. Therefore, it is paramarthika jnanam, ultimate knowledge of liberation. Now, the question is, which swapratibodha anupadeshika jnana is tarakam? And how it is tarakam? So that is described in the next part of the sutra. Sarva vishayam na asya kinchit avishayi bhutam iti arthaha. Sarva vishayam, all that needs to be known for final emancipation is known absolutely, unconditionally and uncompartmentally, completely. Sarva vishayam. And nothing is avishayi bhutam. Nothing is remaining as not an object of knowledge, a complete, comprehensive, circumspect knowledge about that ultimate final reality. So that is Sarvajñatvam, Sarvajñatrutvam, which was discussed earlier. And Sarvatha Vishayam as well. Sarvatha Vishayam Atita Anagata Pratyutpannam Sarvam Paryayayi Sarvatha Janati iti Arthaha. Sarvatha Vishayak Jnana. With respect to the knowable object, it is not just the knowledge of it itself in that moment, but sarvatha, in all its states. As I told you about the example of umbilical fruit in our hand, we do not know its latent stages and we do not know the potential stages. So our knowledge is not sarvatha. Whereas this is sarvatha knowledge. Then also akramam. That doesn't need any succession. It is in one single moment, in one single stroke. Like we say, with slap of finger, something happens. It happens that way. And this akramam is also important, as we saw that our knowledge otherwise is a process. We gradually know something in a piecemeal manner. This is not in piecemeal manner. This is in one single stroke. Yugapat, simultaneously. In a moment, one moment, knowledge comes. That's the meaning of sarvatha. Etad vivekaja jnanam paripurnam. That viveka jnanam is fully accomplished. There is no nyunatvam. There is no deficiency. There is no shortfall. Asyaiva anshaha yoga pradipo madhumatim bhumim upadaya yavad asya parisamapti iti. Now this knowledge is ultimate knowledge. There is no further utkarsham. There is no further evolvement. Now this has come in from madhumati bhumi. And from that, in the various levels of hierarchies it has gone through, and now it has come to ultimate and final stage of knowledge. So that is also made clear by Vyasa. Prapta asya vivekaja jnanasya aprapti vivekaja jnanasya va. This vivekaja jnanam that is mentioned, whether it is attained or not attained, because if it is attained, you know it is taraka jnanam, you get kaivalyam. That means the yogi has to go from the madhumati bhumi. We saw those 4 bhumis, 4 hierarchies, 4 levels through which yogi goes. Now whether you go through that process or not, yet the kaivalya is ensured. Now it is not that you have to go through all the processes of siddhis which are mentioned in the 3rd chapter. So many siddhis, nearly 30 plus siddhis were mentioned so far. So we think this is how the structure of yoga is, that you must attain one after one planes, and then you will be getting the liberation. So this taraka jnanam, whether it is through vivekaja jnanam, of course then it has a samadhi process. Vitarka samadhi, vichara samadhi, ananda samadhi, asmita samadhi, asapragyata samadhi. So these are various levels of samadhis, not just different samadhis, different levels of samadhis. So we think that is only the way, but Vyasa makes it clear. Prapta vivekaja jnanasya aprapti vivekaja jnanasya va. Whether you have the vivekaja jnanam or no vivekaja jnanam, it is again possible that you can reach the spiritual samam bonam. That is the final sutra of this Vibhuti Pada. Sattva Purushayoho Shuddhi Samye Kaivalyam. So it should not be presumed that you will have to go through the entire knowledge process that was so far mentioned in Vibhuti Pada, right from the first Siddhi mentioned to the last Siddhi mentioned, which was Viveka Jnanam. So that is a long route, because that gives you taraka jnanam. Whether you have taraka jnanam in the process mentioned or you don't have it, yet Kaivalya is possible in yoga. Kaivalya is possible in yoga. And therefore it's a very important statement that comes. What is that process? Sattva Purushayoho Shuddhi Samye Kaivalyam Viti. The process of purification itself of sattva, that is buddhi sattva, or grossly rendered as chitta shuddhi, and purusha, the purificatory process itself can land one into kaivalya, doesn't have to go through the hopping process of knowledge after knowledge after knowledge of various hierarchies, the bhumis that you were told about, Madhumati, Madhupratika, etc. It's not that that's the ladder you have to climb up. Even without going through that ladder, escalator, there is also a process which is purificatory process. By purificatory processes also will culminate into Sattva Purusha Shuddhi Samya, equal purification in the two entities, which is Buddhi Sattva and Purusha Tattva. That also will bestow Kaivalyam. So, very important divergence is coming in this sutra, which is the last and final sutra, the 55th sutra of Vibhuti Pada. So we will try to look into that purificatory process of yoga, which can escalate into spiritual samambonam, besides the process of structuring of knowledge, grosser metaphysical to subtler and subtler and subtler metaphysical knowledge, and ultimately savior knowledge, and then Kaivalya. So we will discuss that last sutra of the Vibhuti Pada in the next session. So enough for the time being. Namaskar all of you.